I do.
Be seated.
May it please the court?
Yes, sir.
Counsel. All right, would you state your full name, please?
Leslie Boileau Jr.,
How old are you, Dale?
33.
Are you employed right now?
I am.
What are you doing for a living?
I'm working at a fabrication shop learning how to weld.
And you used to work for the Marion County Sheriff's Office, is that
I did.
right? How long did you work for the sheriff?
8 years.
And you were terminated as a result of the incident that we're here about today.
I was.
What were your duties at the time that you left the sheriff's office?
I was a patrol deputy.
How much did you weigh in September of 2024?
210, 215 pounds.
Okay, so it looks like you've lost a considerable amount of weight.
A little bit.
Okay. How tall are you?
5'6".
In September of 2024, how long had you lived in the house on 32nd Avenue?
About 5 years.
Did you own it or rent it?
I had a mortgage.
How did you meet Polina Wright?
We initially met on a dating app, and then we eventually met in person downtown a couple weeks after.
How did the first meeting go?
Went well.
Did you begin to see each other at that point?
Yeah.
At the time of her death, how long had you been dating Polina?
About 2 years.
Tell us about her.
She was a great person. She was modest, she was respectful, she was loyal. She encouraged me to be a better person. She was just naturally beautiful.
Had you met her parents?
I did.
How often would you see her parents?
Every now and then.
Did they live in Marion County?
No, they didn't.
Where did they live?
I believe it's Citrus County, Florida City.
Did you have some knowledge of Polina's upbringing?
Yeah, she told me.
What did she tell you?
She went basically through her entire childhood. We both did. She was adopted from Russia when she was 6 or 7. She has a twin sister and a brother that was adopted with her.
So the Wrights adopted her
Yeah,
from Russia.
yeah.
Did she have other siblings within the Wright family?
Yeah, she did.
Was she working in September of 2024?
She was.
What was she do? What did she do for a living?
She worked as basically, I would say, a secretary for a company out in the shore. She did their billing and purchasing and payroll and stuff like that. She was working on, actually in September, transferring over to a new job.
Do you know if she'd been to college?
I believe so, yes.
Did she have any kind of degree that you were aware of?
I believe she had an AA degree from CF.
Now, you said you'd been together for 2 years. Had you begun to discuss marriage at all?
We kind of joked about it, but it was obviously on the table. We were working towards that. You don't date someone for 2 years and not have that on the table, basically.
What were your living arrangements by September of 2024?
She was free to come and go as she pleased. She was still in her lease at an apartment complex, but we were actively speaking on, and it was going to be like in 3 or 4 months when her lease was up, she was going to be living with me full time.
Did she have a key to your house?
She did.
Let's talk about September 19th. What did you do that day?
We met up probably around 9 or 10 o'clock that morning.
How did you meet up?
She came over to my house.
Okay.
It was pretty standard. I was going into my long weekend of work, so pretty much any day we had off before that, we try to hang out. so it was a pretty typical day for us. We went out to lunch, hit a couple stores, and then was just hanging out around the house.
Where did you go to lunch?
Longhorn Steakhouse.
Was any alcohol consumed at lunch?
No.
Where did you go after lunch?
If I remember correctly, we went to Target and I think TJ Maxx, and then we came home.
And what did you do when you got home?
We just hung out, just watched TV.
All right. At some point that late afternoon or evening, did you decide to go out to dinner?
We did.
How did you choose the Mexican place?
We talked about a couple different options and we landed on Mexican food. It was extremely close to the house and we didn't really want to.
Had you been there before?
Yeah.
So you ordered food and margaritas.
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about the drinks.
Well, we normally get one margarita when we're there because it's a large margarita. But it was 2 for 1s that night when we walked in, so and they were taking a while. We were there over an hour, so we just started ordering the 2 for 1 margaritas, and we landed on 3 by the time we were done.
How were they serving them?
And like little mug gauntlet things.
Okay. And 6 of them cost you $26.94. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that was less than $4.50 each.
Sounds about right.
Did they taste like they had any alcohol in them?
They taste a lot like sour mix, but
Okay. Now, the check that Detective Kern was able to obtain said your tab was opened at about 7:30 and then closed at 8:32 p.m. What did you do when you left the restaurant?
we drove straight home.
How far from the house is the restaurant?
5 minutes, easy.
Okay. And what did the two of you do when you got back home?
We changed. I don't really know what she was doing. She was doing her stuff, taking care of her cat. I fed my dog. That's when I came out to the living room and put on the football game and started doing the gun stuff.
Okay. Now, you changed out of whatever you had worn to the restaurant
Correct.
into the clothing that we've seen on the videos?
Correct.
Okay. And Polina had a blanket on
Yeah.
and nothing else.
Correct.
Was that normal?
At this point in the relationship, yes.
Okay. So that was typical for her once she got home and got comfortable, was to disrobe and grab a blanket?
I wouldn't say 100% of the time, but it was very common.
Okay. Did you have any more alcohol when you got back home?
No.
Now, you called 911 at 10:52 p.m.
Yes.
I'd like you to walk us through that 2.5 hour period of time from the point you got back from dinner until that call was made.
So when I came in and sat down at the dining room table, I started cleaning my rifle because I had just shot it a couple weeks prior, or within a week. I was waiting for all of my gun cleaning stuff to come in to clean that said gun. It was already all on the table. I saw it, I sat down and I started cleaning it. She was off doing other stuff in the house. And then she eventually came over and sat down and started talking to me. We weren't necessarily talking about the gun stuff, we were just hanging out. We talked about what we were gonna do next week, like went through a bunch of different stuff, and then she started to show interest in the gun cleaning, so I started showing her parts, handing it to her, stuff like that.
Now, is this exclusively the rifle that
Yes.
we're talking about at this point?
Yes, it was just the rifle.
Now, and we'll kind of come back to exactly what you did with the gun stuff.
Okay.
But Did the two of you stay at that table the entire 2.5 hours?
No, we were up and down.
Okay. So you would get up from the table, walk some other part of the house?
Yeah, I had to use the bathroom at some point, I remember. I know she got up and went to the bathroom at some point.
Did she get up from the table?
Yeah.
Do you know what she was doing when she left?
No.
Okay. So this wasn't a continuous, let's take apart and put together this.
No.
Dale, have you thought about what happened that night and the mistakes that you made
Plenty,
every day?
pretty much.
What should have been different?
We shouldn't have been sitting across from each other.
Why didn't you move her?
I thought we were being safe. It was our normal spots to sit.
At a gun range during firearms training, how are trainees and the officers that go to do their annuals, how are they positioned?
In a straight line.
Okay, so nobody facing each other.
No. You're facing the target you're going to shoot at.
How many times have you gone through well, there's an initial firearms training, right, when you become a law enforcement
Yeah.
officer? Okay. And then you have regular training, is that right?
Yeah, once a year.
This is State's Exhibit 24. According to the state, this is a record of your training, including your firearms training. So in 8 years, you accumulated quite a bit of paper.
Yeah.
How many times do you think you'd been on a gun range while you were with the sheriff's office?
Maybe 12 times.
Okay. Had you ever been shaded by another shooter during those trainings?
Yes.
What does shaded mean?
It basically flagged is another term for it. It means another officer on the range basically turns and points their gun at you.
So accidents happen.
They do.
Now, when you were talking with Detective Kern, you used the phrase dry fire exercise.
Yes.
Is that an accurate description of what you were showing Polina?
Yes.
Tell us what a dry fire exercise is and tell us that you've ever had to do one.
Yes, it's basically the first step to learning how to handle a firearm. It's the first thing you do in the police academy. It's really the only training and or teaching you can do inside of a house. It's basically just showing you how to hold the gun and pull the trigger.
Does it involve the sight picture
Yeah.
on a handgun or a rifle?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, did you show that to her and explain it to her
Yes.
with that rifle?
Yes.
Did you give her something to aim at?
Yes.
What did you tell her?
The picture on the wall.
Where was the picture?
A couple feet next to me.
Okay. Behind you and
Yeah.
away from you?
Yeah.
You didn't ask her to point the rifle at you?
No.
And you never pointed the rifle at her?
No.
And you weren't playing cops and robbers with guns?
No.
What did she think of the rifle?
She didn't really care for it. It was too heavy.
All right. So when she was done with the rifle, what happened?
I put it back together and I laid it on the end of the table. And that's when she picked up my handgun.
Where was the handgun?
It was just laying on the table.
Is that the gun that goes with your uniform or another gun?
It's my off-duty weapon that the sheriff's office gives us to carry.
Tell us what happened when she picked up the handgun.
Well, when I was laying down the rifle, I look up and she's holding the handgun. And obviously I knew that gun was loaded because it's the one I took to dinner. So I asked her to hand it to me, which she did, and I unloaded it, and then I handed it back to her.
And how did you unload it?
Taking the magazine out and ejecting the one that's in the chamber.
And where did you put the magazine and the round you ejected?
I just set it on the table.
On your side?
Yeah. Well, I was on that side of the table at that point.
Okay. Now, when you handed her the rifle, did you hand her the weapon loaded?
No.
Did she ever have the ammunition for
No.
the rifle?
No.
When you handed her the handgun, was there any ammunition with it?
No.
So that both of them were safe when you handed them to her?
Yes.
Okay. What did you do with, what did she do, and what did you show her to do with the handgun?
Well, I demonstrated first how to hold the handgun. I pointed it at the wall, like to the right of her where the chalkboard was. Showed her how to hold it, showed her how to pull the trigger. Showed her how to work the action of the handgun, and then I handed it back to her.
Okay. Now, was all this going on because you wanted to teach her how to handle a handgun, or did she ask you to do this?
She was inquisitive. I had mentioned to her in the past that she needed to learn home defense, basically. I was like, I'd pay for a class, like I'd go with you. She made it sound like she had never touched a gun before, so I was like, there's always guns around my house because of my job. So I was like, you need to learn that type of stuff. She always kind of put it off, didn't really show any interest until that night.
Now, you've already said other things were going on while this exercise was playing out. Was the television on?
Yeah, we were watching football.
Okay. So this was a Thursday night?
Yeah.
So it was the NFL game?
Yeah.
Okay. And from where you were seated, could you see the television?
Yeah.
Okay. But you had to turn to see it?
Yeah, I was kind of angled, the exact angle I'm sitting now.
How did the rifle end up back in your hands?
I remembered I didn't do a function test on it when I put it back together. I was allowing her to kind of do her thing with the handgun. I didn't want to overwhelm her. So we were just sitting there talking, and I was watching the football game.
Okay. And when you picked the rifle up, it had a magazine in it. Did it not?
Yes.
Because that's the way you had put it down.
Yeah.
Because when you put it down, did you intend to be done with it the first time? So how do you put up that weapon when it's clean and you're going to put it away?
I just put a magazine in it. I don't charge it. That's how we keep our rifles at the sheriff's office. We don't keep one in the chamber. And I typically just go store it.
And charge, what is that?
It means round in the chamber.
Okay. And does an AR style rifle have a different sort of way to load around
Yes.
it? Explain it.
It has a charging handle where a handgun has a slide. Very similar, I guess, action you could say, but
All right.
different at the same time.
So when you had put the rifle down on the table, there was no bullet in the chamber,
Correct.
and it had a full magazine.
Don't keep, the magazine can hold 30 rounds. I don't
So
keep
you're
30.
5 short.
Yeah, I don't keep it fully loaded.
And that's to preserve the spring in
Yes.
the magazine?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had 25 rounds in it.
Yes.
All right. And when you picked it back up, while she's doing the dry fire thing with the handgun, how did you hold it?
I picked it up while watching the TV, and I was holding it like this.
Stand up, to make sure all the
I was
cameras
holding
can
it like
see it.
this.
So you were kind of cradling.
Yeah.
So the magazine was down. Okay. And what was your intention? What were you going to do with it?
I was trying.
What is this function test you're talking about?
So when you disassemble a rifle and you put it back together, you have to do a function test to ensure that you put it back together correctly. If you didn't put it back together correctly, it's not going to fire the next time you need it to fire.
All right. And describe or explain the steps in this function test.
The bolt's forward, obviously. You have to pull the trigger and hold the trigger and then charge it. Release the trigger and pull the trigger again. And you're listening for the hammer to drop on the firearm to make sure you assembled it correctly. Because if you did not assemble it correctly, it's not going to make that click sound.
So you got it cradled in your arms,
Yeah.
barrel off to your left.
Yeah.
Okay. You're sitting across the table,
Yeah.
and you're kind of watching TV.
Yeah.
And you said you're listening for a click. So did you either put your head down to the rifle or bring the rifle up to your head?
Both. Like, it was, because I was listening more so for a sound, and you can't really see what you're looking for type of deal. It's internal.
Okay. So you have to listen for it.
Yeah.
When you pulled the trigger the first time, what happened?
What was supposed to happen? You heard a click.
And then when you charged it and pulled the trigger the second time,
That's when it went off.
I know you know now where the barrel is pointing. Were you looking at Polina when you were doing this?
No, I was looking at the TV.
What did you do after you realized she was hit?
Called 911.
Okay. Did you go to her?
I did.
Okay. Now, what position did she start in? I mean, she's hit. Did she fall back, fall forward?
She was just sitting in the chair.
And did you maintain that position until the officers arrived?
Yeah.
So you were kind of cradling her head?
I didn't know what else to do.
Okay. Were you panicked at that point?
Yeah, I was freaking out.
So they got you out of the house. They told you to leave the house. Is that right? Had you seen the body camera videos before this trial began?
No.
You remember doing the things that you saw yourself do on the video?
No, but, I don't know.
The screaming and rolling on the ground, and all of that. Do you remember it?
Not
Any
really.
of that happened?
Not really.
Do you remember all the things you said to the police officers there in your yard?
No.
What was going through your head at that point?
I was just trying to figure out what happened, how I allowed it to happen.
And technically, Polina is dead because you ended up pointing the barrel at her.
Yeah.
But you didn't aim it at her.
No.
Did you ever aim it at her?
No.
So when you told the officers we were pointing the guns at each other, what did that mean when it came out of your mouth?
I was coming to terms with what happened. We obviously pointing guns at each other. That's how this probably happened.
Did any of them ask you what that meant? To describe exactly what had happened?
No.
No. Then you got driven to the police station, and they stuck you in an interview room. that I gather from seeing the blanket was a little cold.
It was.
How cold?
I was shivering.
Do you remember how long you sat in that room?
No.
Was the sun up when you left that building?
Yeah.
You got there at midnight. Did you know that? You knew Sergeant Kerr, right?
I did.
How did you know him?
Through passing through the jail. He used to work for the sheriff's office.
He knew your name?
Yeah.
He knew you preferred to be called Dale?
Yeah.
Instead of Leslie?
Yeah.
And the jury's seen your dialogue with Detective Kern. Did he ever ask you the detail that I have asked you?
No.
All right. I don't have any other questions.
State any cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Taddy, is this your pen? I want to clarify a couple things that you just told me. So just to make sure, throughout most of the entire night, that AR rifle was in your possession.
Correct.
And when that gun went off, that AR rifle was in your control.
Yes.
You didn't slip. You didn't slip and fall, correct?
No.
You didn't drop the gun. You didn't drop the gun.
No.
You didn't misplace the gun or anything like that.
No.
In fact, when the gun went off, it was in your hands.
It was.
And when the gun went off, you were the one who pulled the trigger.
I was.
And when the gun went off, you were the one who intended to pull the trigger at that point in time.
Yes.
And the only reason why those firearms were out at that point in time was because you decided you wanted to clean them that evening.
I did.
And now, your AR, do you normally keep that in a gun safe at your house, or do you keep that out?
I keep it in my bedroom.
Okay. But you were the one who decided to take it out and bring it into the living room, or into the dining room
It
table.
was already sitting on the dining room.
So you
table.
put it there earlier?
Yeah.
And you decided to take out those cleaning products from Amazon,
Yes.
and you decided to clean the gun.
I did.
And in fact, you told us originally Polina wasn't even anywhere near you when you cleaned that gun.
Correct.
But she later came over and she wanted to learn about the firearm.
She did.
And you decided to teach her about the firearm.
Yes.
And you decided to teach her about that firearm with loaded magazines and live ammunition sitting on that dining room table.
Yes.
You're very familiar with firearms, are you not?
Familiar.
In fact, one of your hobbies is you like to hunt.
Yes.
And you were a law enforcement officer, like you said, for 8 years.
Yes.
And you went under training every single year because you had to do an annual training, correct?
Yes.
And one of those things that every single year during that annual training they talk about is gun safety.
Yes.
And I know Mr. Taddy talked a little bit, like you said, when you're at the gun range, you guys are in a straight line.
Yes.
And in fact, there's a term called a hot range and a cold range. Is that correct?
Correct.
Hot range means that guns are being fired and nobody's allowed to go downrange. Is that correct?
Yes.
And a cold range means that people are going down to check targets, or people are in that area to where there's a risk, so you have to put all guns down and nobody can have a gun in their hand. Is that correct?
Correct.
And in fact, there's general rules of safety that you guys learn every year. Like, you always treat a firearm if it's loaded.
Correct.
And you never point it towards another person.
Correct.
And that you should not handle firearms, especially when drinking or intoxicated.
Yes.
And that you only point a firearm as something that you intend to kill or destroy.
That's correct.
I also want to talk about these trainings. When you do these trainings, you're shooting at targets, correct?
Yes.
And when you're shooting at these targets, you aim your firearm get a clear sight picture
Yes.
using your sights,
Yeah.
and then you pull that trigger.
Yes.
When you were sitting at that table with Paulina, there was a point in time you activated that red dot sight.
Yes.
In fact, you told Detective Kern it was to show her how that sight worked.
Yes.
Show her how to get a sight picture.
Yes.
Show her how to aim at a target.
Yes.
You heard the medical examiner's testimony yesterday that when that path of that bullet went directly in her forehead and directly out the back of her head.
Yeah.
Correct? So that means at the time that gun went off, it was aimed directly at her. No further questions, Judge.
Any redirect examination?
Just briefly. So, Mr. O'Neill asked you if you intended to pull the trigger.
I did.
Did you intend to shoot Paulina?
No.
Did you intend to discharge that weapon?
No.
You thought it was going to click. No further questions.
Any recross examination?
No, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, do any of you all have questions? If so, please raise your hands. Okay, write them down on a clean sheet of paper, please. Do we have one more coming? If so, raise your hand if you're still writing. Our juror there in the back row, I am having trouble reading your handwriting. It's the third word. I'm going to ask that you just clean it up for me. Thank you. Okay. All right. Council approach. Any other questions? If so, raise your hands. Okay. Oh, we have. Okay. Yeah. Nice nod. Take what time you need. Write it. Take what time you need to think out how you want me to pose the question. No rush. Council, if y'all want to come up in the meantime and look at the others. Put the white noise on. Mr. Boileau, I'm going to ask you the questions of the jury has posed. I'm going to ask them exactly as they're written. Had he cleaned guns in front of Polina before the night in question?
No.
Were you standing or sitting when gun went off?
I believe I was sitting.
He stated drinks were 2 for 1, so they had 6 drinks instead of 3.
No, I bought 6 drinks total, 3 each.
Why was her hand in front of her face at time of accident?
I have no idea.
At some point, defendant said forgot it was loaded. Now he says he knew it was loaded. Why the change?
I don't believe I ever said it. I knew it was loaded. I remember hindsight that I put it together the normal way I would put it away, and I forgot I did that.
What do you mean I knew better and I shouldn't have let this happen?
I should have changed something to keep this from happening. Should have been sitting across from each other.
Aye. Defense, any follow-up?
No, sir.
State, any follow-up?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Members of the jury, any additional questions from any of you all? If so, please raise your hands. Okay. Oh, go ahead. Whoa. Questions have to be written. Okay, and use a clean sheet of paper with no other writing on it. Put the white noise on, ladies and gentlemen. Sir, the jury has posed an additional question. Are pointing guns at each other part of training?
No.
Any follow-up?
No, sir.
State?
No, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, any additional questions? If so, please raise your hand. Okay. Please write down on a clean piece of paper. Put the white noise on, ladies and gentlemen. Why did you decide to clean guns at the end of the day, especially since you had been drinking?
I thought we were being safe. I didn't really put much thought into it.
Any follow-up, defense?
No, sir.
State.
No, Your Honor.
Members of the jury, any additional questions? If so, raise your hands. All right, seeing no hands, sir, you can retake your seat. Mr. Tiny, you can...
Defense with rest.
Okay. State, do you intend to present any rebuttal evidence?
No, Your Honor.
All right, members of the jury, the state and the